Thank you so much for joining us. You guys are here as CCR and our consultants to join us for a Teach in Wages PowerPoint where we kind of discuss benefits of the Teach in Wages program and how you guys can facilitate those conversations on your consultation visits. This is our introduction, overview, and shared goals. So we're here to elevate the workforce, show the direct correlation between the workforce and quality childcare for children. We're going to deepen understanding to better promote programs and share resources. We're going to get prepared and comfortable to address pushback that you might face from program directors or home programs. We're going to keep information top of mind so we can stay connected with the most recent information for Teach in Wages, and we're going to open the channels of communication.
Thanks, Amber. I'm Ashley Addy. I'm the Director of Workforce Initiatives at Iowa AUIC, which is a fancy way to say I manage the Teach in Wages programs. I also oversee our CDA Navigator team in the state of Iowa. So I'm going to provide some detail about the programs for you all. So what is TEACH? TEACH is known as a scholarship program. It's a comprehensive scholarship program, which is designed to address some of the chronic issues that we see in early childhood related specifically to education, compensation, and retention. The scholarship program was built in the research base about early childhood. And what TEACH provides for the workforce is funding support for tuition, books, travel or internet costs, paid time away from work, which we call release time, and compensation increases for members of the workforce who are going back to college to earn degrees, credentials, and credits in early childhood education. Our hope for the scholarship is that we are supporting members of the workforce from wherever they are to an increased level of education, because we know that that increased level of education gives them more tools in the toolbox as they work with young children every day. And we know that improves the quality of care they provide. So in return for the investment that TEACH makes, the scholar is required to commit to an extra year in their sponsoring program. That additional commitment is part of how TEACH addresses retention for the workforce. So each scholarship recipient is assigned to a TEACH counselor who is there to help support them along the way, answer any questions they have, guide them along their professional development journey, provide encouragement, support, anything that that person needs. And that's something that is unique to TEACH and helps set TEACH aside as a scholarship program. The individual support that they receive from that counseling specialist. In order to be eligible for a TEACH scholarship, a provider has to be working in a regulated child care program. That can be a center, a preschool, or a home program for at least 30 hours a week. We do have part-time models available for people who are working 20 hours at least. That provider also needs to have worked with children birth to age preschool. We get questions about school age. School age are not eligible for the TEACH scholarship. So birth to preschool age in their current program for at least 3 months, 6 months at the bachelor's level. That waiting period, that commitment period, is so that we know there's goodness of fit between the employer and the employee. Additionally, that person has to be working toward an early childhood degree or credential, something that is a related degree in early childhood education. And finally, they have to have their support, the support of their employer. TEACH works as a partnership scholarship between TEACH, the scholarship individual, and their sponsoring program. In the case of a home provider, the home provider wears two hats, both the hat of the scholarship recipient and the employer. Some eligibility notes, some points of clarification that come up, particularly with CCR and our consultants as it relates to TEACH eligibility. TEACH eligibility is different from wages eligibility. TEACH casts a broader net. more people are eligible for teach than are eligible for wages. And that's an important distinction to note. Almost everybody working in early childhood is eligible for teach. Regulated programs from a teach perspective include those programs that are regulated by the Department of Education or are license exempt. A quality rating is not required for teach. We do encourage that, but it's not required. Childcare assistance is not required for teach, and there is no income cap teach. So much broader eligibility than for wages. And I think that's a very important, an important piece to walk away from when we think about teach eligibility. We work in a field where degrees are not required. And so often there is a conversation with providers or in general, I think in the field about why should we get degrees? Why do degrees matter? And there is tons of research about why degrees matter. So many members of the child care workforce are parents. So here is some data that you might use as a consultant to sort of counteract the argument of why do I need a college degree when I'm working in a field that doesn't require one? Parents who have a bachelor degree have children who are more likely to complete an advanced degree. And you can see in the bar graphs here on the chart also that median household income is strongly correlated with bachelor degree for that parent, but also for their children going forward. So again, just to reiterate, adults who have a bachelor degree tend to have better economic outcomes. Adults who have at least one college educated parent are more likely to complete college compared with adults who have less educated parents. We know that increased provider education leads to better care for children. More words are spoken, more developmentally appropriate care and learning is happening in those environments. I think it's particularly important to note that for the most part, this is a female workforce. Circumstances can always change in a woman's life. Spouses can become disabled and the spouse who you are relying on income from may not be able to bring that income in. Divorce happens. You just never know what can lie ahead. And so in some ways, education for a woman in a household is also kind of like an insurance policy. A degree is also a way to validate the information, skills, and abilities that someone has in early childhood education. It's never wasted. Those credits stay on a transcript forever. So getting a degree in a field that doesn't require a degree is a common point of pushback. So we wanted to be sure that consultants, you all have some information to address that argument that you might hear from members of the workforce. It's always important to me that people don't just hear from teach staff about how teach works and whether teach is important, because obviously we like it, we work here. These are some of the evaluation results that we gathered during our survey this year. We have been in Iowa since 2003. We do a survey every year. Feedback is very consistent. So 98% of the people we worked with would recommend teach to someone that they know. And you can see some quotes there. The program is easy to follow, easy to work with. It's made an impact in my life. We do hear a lot of positive feedback from the people who have come through our door and decided to take that next step forward in their own professional development pathway. I always find this data particularly compelling. We ask our recipients, after you've attended college classes, how do you feel about your own skills with the children that you serve? And you can see here, their largest response is that they're better able to identify and meet the needs of the students in their classroom, followed closely by they're implementing more developmentally appropriate practices in their care, which are things that we want them to be doing. So we know that that increased education is leading to the kinds of outcomes that we would hope to see in the classroom. A bit more about what teach recipients are saying. This question was, how has Teach helped you? And you can see top responses are provided financial support and helped me be a higher quality professional. Again, just helping to build this workforce's capacity to be professional and provide quality care and education to the children they are serving. So I think this would be a great place for Amber and Jody to chime in. These are, as we built this presentation and gathered feedback from consultants and a broader work group, we tried to put together kind of some prompts and some thoughts and some words for you all to use as you are trying to plant seeds about Teach with the programs and providers you are working with.
I think that top one is really important. I remember when my consultant came and talked to me about teaching wages, and I had that trust built with her as a home provider to know that she wouldn't recommend something to me that was scary. And so using that relationship to encourage something that sounds scary. As adults, sometimes it's scary to think about going back into school, doing online classes. It's out of our comfort zone. So just you as a consultant being that person to tell them it doesn't have to be something scary, it's something that can be manageable, kind of relating to them in that one-on-one relationship can really ease their anxiety around it. So I just think it gives us such a great advantage because we have that relationship built with them. Use Teach as an answer to, I've already taken all the training. That was another one I can really connect to as a consultant. Like, there's only so many training opportunities available and out there. And so many times we'll be like, well, I've taken that or I've taken this. A great thing to remember is college courses and credits count towards annual training hours. So every college credit you have, one credit is worth 15 training hours. So let's say you're taking a 3-hour credit course, that's 45 potential hours of annual training that you have to use for regulatory purposes. As a center employee, you might not need that many, but you're still taking the classes, investing in yourself while you're meeting those regulatory and licensing guidelines. As a home person, you could potentially take one class and get your whole 2-year requirements done with just that one class. So it's just a great way they get to dictate what the classes they take, what's valuable to them while they invest in themselves.
I found a lot of value in the one about directors seeing Teach as a strategy to address staff turnover. When I started working with the Teach program, I was a center staff member, and it gave me a lot of confidence to know that the program I was with felt enough of a commitment that they wanted me to stay, that they were able to agree to have me sign on with Teach at that point. I was able to gain my associate's degree while I was still teaching preschool at the center. And as I was going through, other staff members also gained enough confidence seeing that I was able to go through it as a mom while I was still working, and to see the benefits that I was getting those release time pieces, that I was getting some regular raises. And we did have quite a significant decrease in staff turnover based solely upon some of us kind of stepping out and utilizing Teach. Even though it was scary, like Amber said earlier, it was scary to start out. We were all adults, but it did really help with staff turnover.
I think it helps to identify that last bullet, identify those who might not be on a long-term path. I see in consultations so many times people say this is great for right now, or this is working for right now, but their kids might be home. This might not be an end game for them. So while they do have those years at their home daycare or in a center, planning for the future, like maybe their 5-year plan is to be a teacher, or maybe their 5-year plan is to be to own a center or to work at a Montessori school or whatever their plan is, them identifying this isn't the end game for me and what can I do next to be more prepared. Because while they have that time, investing in themselves and their program is a great opportunity.
Maybe they're 5 years to be a CCR and our consultant or a teach counselor.
Exactly.
On that path. I want to just note also cost is a barrier that comes up a lot, but I can't do that because it's going to cost money. It's going to cost my program money. Our average associate recipient will make money going to college. They will receive checks from us in the mail versus a bill. So I think that's very important to note. And we work very closely with programs to figure out a solution, a model that works best for them. The cost is often much, much lower than programs think. It is a barrier that sounds bigger and scarier than it is in reality. And oftentimes it is just a shift in investment. Not that it's going to cost more money, but I'm going to take PD money that I maybe had set aside and put it over here instead of in that bucket. So I think that's an important one to note. Teach counselors are very good at having those conversations. And that's certainly something that we want to have the opportunity to do and are happy to do. So that's an opportunity for a consultant to reach out to teach and say, hey, I have this program with questions. Can we all have a conversation and get that scheduled and set up so that we can address some of those concerns or fears or things that sound scary, to try to provide some reassurances. So moving on to what is wages. We talk about teach and wages being sister programs to one another. I like to think about teach as the mechanism to support earning the education and wages for the reward for the education that has been earned. So wages is a salary supplement program, and it provides direct payments to the workforce based on their individual level of education and commitment and their program's level of formal quality. And same as teach, wages was developed from the research base in early childhood and strives to address those same three things: education, compensation, and we say commitment here, which is just the flip side of retention. So this is the current wages scale. This is brand new as of July 1st, 2025. It is our deep hope as a program that we will have this scale for the foreseeable future and will not have a change as we have had in many years past. While wages is in some ways complicated to explain, it's pretty straightforward when you put it on a map this way. If you have the level of education listed in that education requirement column, you may be eligible for the supplement amount listed on the right-hand side. And so that's a great starting point, I think, with providers to say, if you have, or it looks like you have, and you might be eligible for. With wages in particular, we always want, and we do it internally too, please use conditional language as you talk with folks about wages. It looks like you might be, and so those wages folks will confirm. I never want to be on the other end of a phone call where someone says, so-and-so told me that I would be eligible for $7,500 and you're telling me you're not. So we always use conditional language, but it's pretty easy for people to kind of see where they might fall and to figure out what the equivalent amount of money is. The supplement amounts that are listed there on the right-hand side are annual supplement amounts. Those come in semi-annual payments. So people will receive half of that amount twice a year. So you note on the scale, there are tiers for wages. And what are tiers? Tiers are different levels of payment based on a program's quality level. So tier 0 is what we call the pre-IQ for K level. So this is for center teachers only. who work at programs that are not yet IQ for K rated. The reasoning for center teachers only is those center teachers are not the decision makers in their program about IQ for K. They're not in the director chair. They're not a home provider who gets to make decisions about her program. And so what we don't want to happen is for those good center teachers to leave programs that aren't rated yet and go to programs that do have a rating. We want to encourage them to stay. So that was really the philosophy behind the creation of Tier 0. The reason it's called Tier 0 is purely logistical. We already had Tier 1 and Tier 2, so we didn't have to rename them and redo everything in our data system. So then we tacked Tier 0 onto the end. It's a little weird, but it saved us a lot of work and a lot of efficiency. So that's why it's called 0. So those individuals who are eligible for Tier 0, so who are working at programs that are not yet IQ for K rated, are eligible as an individual for 2 years. So if I work at ABC Childcare and that program does not have an IQ for K rating, I could get a wages payment if I have education for 2 years. But if my program has still not gotten a rating in that time, then I will no longer be eligible until my program gets rated. Tier 1 is IQ for K levels 1 and 2, and Tier 2 is IQ for K levels 3 through 5, plus NACCE or NAFCC accreditation and Head Start. It's a little complicated. However, our funding partners at HHS felt it very important to recognize the variable levels of quality and the work associated with them. So that is why we have the 3 tiers. In terms of eligibility then, a provider must work in an HHS regulated early care and education program that accepts child care assistance. They have to earn at or below $25 an hour. They have to have one of the educational levels listed on the scale. That education has to be from a regionally accredited school. And that person has to work 20 hours per week with children birth to age preschool for at least 6 months and be employed when the final confirmation has been completed. So you see already more complicated and a few more rules than teach. So there's a few more notes on the eligibility. First and foremost, different from teach. They're not the same eligibility, which is unfortunately complicated, but is the way that it is. So the $25 income cap, someone can make exactly $25 an hour, but not a penny more. So we check those folks very closely, and it turns out there are a lot of ways to calculate income. We have a formula that is prescribed to us by our national licensor. So that's the way that we calculate income, just so that people know kind of how we arrive at the numbers that we arrive at. Programs have to accept child care assistance. We don't verify that they have any families enrolled. The agreement has to be on their license. The exception to that is that Head Starts don't need to accept child care assistance because they're Head Start. And standalone statewide voluntary programs don't need to accept child care assistance. They've got to work at least 20 hours a week. They're allowed in those 20 hours up to 8 hours of planning time. So if you're looking at those like part day preschool programs, they would fall in that category where we're looking at planning time. When someone works fewer than 31 hours a week, they receive a prorated payment. So if you look at that payment bullet, someone who works 31 plus hours a week gets the full payment. 21 to 30 hours a week gets 75% of the payment. 20 hours a week gets 50%. So we prorate depending on the number of hours worked. That gets confusing. Consultants don't really need to know how all of that works, other than to know if someone gets on wages and is like, well, I didn't get all the money I was supposed to get. This is probably the reason why. The education requirements really are any formal education beyond high school that's early childhood related. So we're looking at the CDA for training first, and then college credits in early childhood education. However, I can't possibly say enough times, education does not have to be an early childhood education. You can have an associate degree in something else. You can have credits in something else and get paid on the wages scale. So it's the number one myth for wages. Say it over and over and over again. It doesn't have to be in early childhood. We want to pay as many people as we can. This is not an eligibility note. I'm sure it's somewhere else in the slides, but just so I make sure I say it. The other thing that's so important is also to ask and ask and ask again if someone has any formal education. Because they will say no and no and no, and then they'll say, oh, you mean from a really long time ago or when I was in high school, those credits I took? Yes. So any education is possibly countable on the wages scale, and we want to make sure that we are capturing that for people. Another common question here is, why are license exempt programs not eligible for wages? The answer is because the funding for wages comes from the Child Care Development Fund, which is from a federal source that funnels through the state. According to the rules that come with those dollars, the funds must be spent on HHS regulated programs. So license exempt programs are not HHS regulated and thus not eligible to receive funds from HHS. That's a windy answer, but there is a reason why, and that is the reason why I wish it was different. We tried to make it different, but that is the final answer. So again, we'll have some dialogue about how to support and recruit providers. And again, I would invite Amber and Jody to chime in here about some successful strategies that they have employed when helping people think about or be encouraged to apply to wages.
Looking at transcripts and education in iPower is something that helps me a lot. I noticed that when we're going through like the IQ4K process and we're looking at like the classroom breakdown sheet, or we're looking at the facilities page and they're really trying to move up their levels in iPower, we'll get to the teacher qualification worksheet and we'll be trying to get all the points possible, and they'll be like, oh, I have these classes, or oh, I have these credits, I didn't know that would make a difference. And that's really an opportunity for me to be like, let's take a deep breath. Like, you have college credits, let's first get them in there, and then now you're available for this program. Like, you're eligible to ask the questions, see what's next. It's really just having a conversation of, maybe in their iPower it says they've completed some college, but they have no transcripts or no classes uploaded, saying, oh, it looks like here it says you have some college or you've completed some college, because they self-disclose that. So asking those clarifying questions. What were those classes like? Where did you take them at? Can we pull up an unofficial transcript and see what that looks like? And usually they get excited, because then it opens more doors than just IQ4K or whatever it is we were working on. Remembering that their iPower account is their digital portfolio. So regardless if they're tied to a program currently, if they leave their program, their iPower and keeping that up to date is like their online resume. That's what makes them marketable in their field, and having all that accurate information just helps them. So it's kind of a great consultation tool when you're working with people in their iPower. Again, I talked about continuing to ask about transcripts, because just like Ashley was saying, so many people might be like, hey, when I was a senior in high school, I got 2 credits from that program I did, or had a home ec class that taught us about babysitting and they gave us information about something else. You know, there's a lot of 2 and 4 credit options in those later years of high school that they might have not considered. A transcript is never too old, is something to very much remember. When I started college, had classes from high school that I just, they tell you they're college credits, but when you're 17 years old, what does that mean at the time? So it's just really reflecting on where can we find these pieces and making it not so much of a chore for them, sitting alongside with the provider saying, hey, let me call the school with you. Like, let's put them on speakerphone, because when you're a provider, you're wearing a million hats. You have a to do list that is never ending. And if it's a phone call to an old high school or an old college, that's the barrier. That's something we can easily overcome in that 45 minutes, an hour we're sitting together. And just having that support is something they need to make the call.
Let's add, the wages team is very skilled at tracking down old transcript. There are some colleges that have since closed their doors. We know where to find those transcripts. So I don't think we have anyone yet whose transcripts we've not been able to find.
Is there, Ashley, too, and maybe this is a good time for a question, you guys have some kind of translation services too for transcripts, or is that a different program?
We don't have any services in agency, but we do have a list that we recommend. Not only translation, but also evaluation. So it's a two-part process, which is important to know. There's getting them translated, which is just getting whatever the language is into English. And then there is also the process of saying, based on what is on this transcript, here is what we would award in an American system. Additionally, Iowa AUIC has a bit of funding to support that cost, because we know that's a barrier for some folks. So if you happen to be working with a provider who has an international transcript, who doesn't have the funding to have it translated or evaluated, please reach out to us and we will try to address that need if we are able. But we do have some funds to support that, and we do have resources available. We have a list, about 3 main agencies that we can send to have that work done. That's a great question. Thanks.
And then that last bullet is just one I like to point out. I think it's so many times when you're working with frustrated directors or frustrated boards, staff turnover is something that is just our everyday normal. I think there was a period of time where we're like, staff is bad, we can't retain staff. We have to get past the mindset that it's going to change. Recruitment and retention is just something we're going to have to adapt to, and making the key factors, whether they're the board, whether they're the center owners, whether it's a firm, letting them know that wages is a retention strategy, letting them know that if while they're hunting for those new employees, if they're looking for some of that college education or formal education, they can use it as saying, hey, here is the bonus supplement scale that you could be eligible for just by working with us and collaborating with us. So I think just looping in your community development specialist, if you as a consultant don't know a lot about dealing with boards, reach out to your support network and just say, hey, help me facilitate this conversation as a retention strategy or recruitment strategy.
I'll just reiterate also, wages is a benefit that programs can offer that doesn't cost the program anything. You can tout that as a program. You can say it's something that you offer and that's available to your employees, that sets you apart maybe from some competition in the community that doesn't cost you on the budget line.
And I think it's important to note too that it's not something extra the center has to do. The check goes right from Iowa AOIC to the program teacher. So it's not like it comes into the center and then they have to write a check or facilitate things. It just goes to the employee, and it's not something that the center even has to worry about the financial aspect or the IRS aspect of it.
That's a great point. We manage that as much as we can for the program. So it is a big perk. And speaking of perks, here we are. Again, this is not what wages staff are saying about the program, but what our program recipients are saying. And so this chart is showing you their answers to what are the wages benefits that you've experienced. And while we expect the ones that are eases financial stress, I think it's really important to note that pretty darn close to that are, it encourages me to stay with my program. I feel more satisfied with my job. I feel more appreciated and recognized for my work. These soft, feel good, benefits of wages are just as important as that additional income in providers' pockets, which I think is really important to note when we're looking at the benefits of wages for the workforce. We've got some quotes here as well. We see some pretty impactful things across the board when we're getting feedback about wages. You know, allowing us to build up our emergency fund and make them meet during stressful times financially. Being able to have recreation and weekend trips, which renews my energy to do a job that's hard and avoid burnout. Those things are so important. So it's great to hear that wages is providing financial relief to people, but also providing some wellness and mental benefit to the workforce. So I want to talk for a moment, particularly about CDA, and CDA is under the Teach umbrella and it's rewarded for wages. There's some new things related to CDA this year. So CDA, that acronym stands for Child Development Associate. It is a credential, which is widely recognized as the best first step credential in early childhood education. I like to think about it as kind of a stair step where you would have the CDA credential and then an associate degree and a bachelor degree. Sometimes that visual is impactful. So there's lots of supports around CDA right now, and CDA is very much in the conversation in our state. I think especially as IQ for K continues to grow and programs continue to engage because it's part of that, the professional development portion of IQ for K. So here's how Teach and Wages and CDA navigators can support the CDA credential. We made a change this year to increase the assessment fee scholarship for the CDA. Let me back up and say, the assessment fee to the Council for Professional Recognition, who awards the CDA credential, increased the assessment fee from $425 to $525. So we took that opportunity to change our scholarship. The copay for the scholarship now is $50, and bonus is $800. It used to be $200. So it is a significant increase. Significant increase in the incentive to earn that CDA. Plus, once someone earns that CDA, hopefully with the support of Teach and a CDA navigator, who's someone that works remotely in the field and can come and meet with that CDA candidate and walk them through all of the pieces of the process. They then can become eligible for wages and receive, at a very minimum, that $550 annual payment twice, because they should get at least 2 years of eligibility. So you can really stack those benefits. You can take the Teach, you can add wages on. It's a minimum of $1,900 now that's on the table for earning the CDA. And we really think about CDA as sort of getting on the pathway from a professional development perspective. There's lots of training, and this is sort of the first step in formalizing some of that professional development. So that really is, I think, the impact and the power of CDA. I will say the thing that we hear most commonly from CDA candidates is, I didn't think I could do it, and now I think that I can, and now I might try college. Or I didn't think I was capable, and now I'm a professional, I'm a teacher, and I'm going to continue down this road. And so it really does open the door for people. So this is a big year for CDA. We're very excited to have these additional supports. So we hope you'll help us share that information. As this group met and had a lot of conversation about how can we help embed Teach and Wages information in the CCR in our system, one of the questions was, well, who do we call? Who do we contact? because staff change, your staff change, our staff change, and we know that that can make it tricky. So it doesn't matter who you contact. We will get your message to the right person. We have 3 generic email addresses: teach, wages, and CDA at Iowa AUIC. Any of those will get you to the person that you need. So that's first and foremost. The second piece, take only one thing away from today. This would probably be the thing I hope you would take away from today. If you are making a referral to Teach and Wages, anytime you as a CCR and our consultant can sort of close that loop of communication and not say to that person, you should call Teach and Wages, and that person says, yep, I will, and they mean to, but they didn't. And instead, you can say, you should call Teach and Wages, and I'm going to email them right now, if it's okay with you, and you give me your permission to share their email address. And I'm going to put the Teach email on there. And so we're going to have the consultant email and the Teach email and the provider email, because then Teach or Wages or CDA has that connection, and we can follow up with that provider. We know they're busy. We know they need to call. We also know sometimes it's scary, so it's easy to put off. So anytime that you can connect us with those providers when you're making that referral, I think we see a huge uptick in the response rate. So I'll say that. You don't have to know all of these details. We mainly need you to know that they exist and how they can help you do your work, because really our goals are the same. We're working to provide better care for kids and to support the workforce along their journey. Amber, I see you unmuted, so please join me.
I did. I love how you commented about closing that loop. I think so many times we're in consultation and we often give them a lot of homework, so to speak, like, hey, please do this, or hey, this would be great, please reach out. But we know how much we have on our plates, and we know that they have just as much, if not more, on their plates, whether they're a home or a center. So really in that moment, asking the question like, hey, we've talked about this. I see you're passionate about it. You might be wanting to learn more. Are you okay with making this email? Are you okay with me connecting you? And then when I come back out on the next visit, if I don't see a reply or if I don't see a lot of communication, I might say, hey, like, how did that conversation go? What were the barriers that were addressed? And they might say, oh, the year already started. I'm not eligible till January. Okay, great. Should we call now and tell them January is a great time? What steps do you need from me? Do you need me to call you in December to remind you that January is coming up and let's do this next step? It's really project management. They've identified that this is something that's a goal for them. They've identified it's important to them. They're willing to listen to you about it. So how can I keep that ball rolling and making it that I'm invested with them? So I just think having that constant communication, that follow up, letting them know that you're just as excited about it for them, and just making it easier on them. Like, it takes 2 seconds to send an email and open a conversation, and we know if we start the conversation, it might continue longer.
I think that the relationship that the child care consultants have with their programs really falls into play here as well, because we're in there, we're meeting with those programs. We probably know them very well. There's a trust that they have with us. And so it feels very different for us to just leave the information with them, as opposed to, we believe in you so much that we're going to go ahead and make this connection. We believe that you can do this so much that we're going to go ahead and start this email chain. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to check in. And maybe if Teach isn't right yet, then maybe we're going to look at all of your trainings together with the CDA navigator and see if that best first step. But it's really so much of it is about that relationship that is already built, that is already ongoing, and letting them know we believe in you. They trust us. And now we can kind of turn them over to IAUIC for that next step.
Jody, I just wanted to echo your yet. I have been aware of success stories with Teach when I planted the seeds with that provider and the Teach staff years prior. Years. So you just never know. Keep believing in those providers. Keep telling them that we know you are a professional and we know you can do this. This team knows how strongly I feel about women getting their education and to support their passion in this field. So I very much echo that yet.
That's great. And I appreciate the highlight in the relationship, and that really, I think Jody brings this conversation full circle. That's why we're here in front of you. I say to the staff at Teach and Wages all the time, CCR and are our most important partners for that exact reason, because you all have the relationships with the provider. You are the trusted source. They believe what you say. We're just some crazy Teach and Wages people behind a computer screen. And so if they trust you and you trust us, then we can make some progress forward together. And so don't underestimate yourselves as consultants and the value of that relationship and your ability to see them and believe in them and have that lead to next steps and change in the path forward. So I think that's a great place for us to end today. We will be back in a few weeks with part 2, where we'll go into a bit deeper dive and some conversations and questions. And we look forward to seeing you all then.